Here's a new rule for the internet. A game needs to be at least 10 years old before you can declare it a masterpiece. This is a new trend on YouTube that is driving me crazy. Everything that comes out now, day one, masterpiece. Bayonetta 3, masterpiece. Resident Evil 4 Remake, masterpiece. Freaking One Piece live action, masterpiece. If it's at all passable, now it's a masterpiece. That is the mode of critique we have now. It is either flaming garbage or a masterpiece. And the reason why this bothers me so much is that it's setting the bar of excellence really, really low so that when a true masterpiece comes across the radar, like today's review, Dodonpachi DaiOuJou Reincarnation, that just gets blurred in with everything else. And so in today's review, I'm not here to just fluff along. I want to actually explain to people, especially people not familiar with the genre of shmups, what makes this game
a masterpiece.
And so let's begin by identifying the key features of a masterpiece. A masterpiece is a work of art that is overall excellent. It is strong in all areas. It has been finely polished by craftsmen who know what they're doing and have been doing it for a very long time. It has no glaring weaknesses. This is DaiOuJou. If you are not familiar with the genre of shmups, if you don't even know what a shmup is, you can still look at this game, try the game, and sense its quality. You can feel how good it is, especially compared to its peers. And then once you get into the genre and you understand the genre and its conventions even more, then you just deepen your appreciation for this game and you start to see how well made it is even now, all these years later, and how influential it has been over the genre as a whole. These are the hallmarks of a masterpiece. And I think a fun comparison would be something like Ghost in the Shell, the anime film, because Ghost in the Shell, like DaiOuJou, even if you're a complete gaijin like myself and you don't really watch all that much anime, you can still look at the visual quality of that film and the presentation and then the tight storytelling and plot. You can appreciate that outside of the genre conventions of anime. And then once you get into anime, I assume because anime YouTubers still talk about this film in high regard to this day, you can see how good it is compared to its peers and how influential it has been on its peers. So I think DaiOuJou and Ghost in the Shell are alike in that way, and they're also from kind of a similar time period and have a similar sort of dark cyberpunk vibe aesthetically. So I thought that was kind of a cool connection between them as well. And so let's dig into these surface elements of DaiOuJou and then peel back the layers deeper and deeper as we get into the review. So on the surface, DaiOuJou is doing a lot right that is subtle and nuanced, but once you understand it and appreciate it, it is something you'll probably refer to back all the time. So let's begin by talking about the visual presentation of this game. This game is incredibly rich and interesting visually because it understands the concept of being visually rewarding. Everything you do in this game looks good. When you blow up a tiny little tank, it doesn't just vanish into a puff of smoke. It explodes on top of an explosion. Its parts break into pieces. It has like different damage animations. There's a lot of rich detail that makes killing things feel right. Then of course the hyper mechanic, there's nothing more satisfying than when you fire up that hyper mechanic and you feel so powerful. I've talked about this in other reviews of shmups. You want the player to feel powerful. None of that Euro shmup garbage where you give them little pea shooters. DaiOuJou hyper, you are dominating the screen and things are exploding and then there's explosions on top of the explosions, giant enemies, giant laser beam. Everything just looks so maximum and right and good. And shmups since DaiOuJou have looked at that and been like, that's a really good idea. This is where we get Crimson Clover Double Breaker, where you get a hyper and they're like, well, let's just give you two hypers. The hyper mechanic is introduced in DaiOuJou, and it is one of the landmark mechanics of the game, not only for gameplay reasons, which we'll talk about later, but just visually, it feels good. It looks good. New players who don't understand what the hyper is even doing want to use it because it is just so awesome. And then that added detail of having things speed up and shoot at you faster gives it an even more visceral, exciting feel. So things in DOJ look right. And one thing that DOJ does that's very subtle, but I think is really underappreciated, is its saturation and background work. So when you look at earlier cave games, my favorite, Dodonpachi, DOJ is a close second though. When you look at Dodonpachi, one of the weaknesses of that game, as much as I love it, is how brightly saturated the backgrounds are. In some of the stages, like the industrial stages, that's not a big deal. But when you get to the final stage, stage 6, and you got this bright ass background, and then these bright bullets on top of it, the bullet visibility really struggles. Where in DOJ, it has a more muted, desaturated background, and that seems like if you're just looking at the background, like that might be kind of a step back, but it's actually a really smart choice because now it really makes the bullets pop and shine and look amazing. And from there, it also helps the bullet visibility. So one little trick you can do that Boghog showed me is if you want to see if the game's bullet visibility is good, is you just take a screenshot and then put it in black and white, and that shows you the saturation levels of the bullets compared to the background. And when you look at DOJ, even in black and white, those bullets stand out from the background. This is a really smart choice that other bullet hells have learned from since then, and it looks great. And so this style choice not only makes DOJ look really cool and dark and moody, but it also makes the bullets stand out. In DOJ, there's never moments where you're like, where did that bullet come from? I didn't see it happening, like you get in Garega or you get in DDP. These desaturated backgrounds, it's a very subtle but smart detail. Another subtle and smart detail about DOJ is the connection between the background design and the enemy placement in the stages. This really, in my opinion, is only possible because Cave at this point are such masters and experts of the genre that they know how to make this happen. Because if you're a newer shmup developer and you're gonna line up your backgrounds with your enemy placement, that is mostly going to be either really stale or a hot mess. But DOJ pulls it off perfectly. And you compare this to something like Touhou, as cool as Touhou is, there is no foreground background integration of the enemy placement. You can swap out any Touhou background with any other Touhou background. It really doesn't matter that much when it comes to the enemy placements. But in DOJ, the enemy placements are heavily structured into the backgrounds. Again, a very subtle but very impressive detail of the visual design. It makes the game feel very organic in a way that's hard to describe, where the enemies kind of belong where they are. It's one of the very few shmups where as I'm playing through the stages, I never question why is the enemy there. It just feels like that is where the enemy should be. It's like that's where it lives. This is its home. Everything just feels so right and natural with the enemy placement, and that is incredibly hard to pull off. And then there is the music. If you want to hear some really detailed discussion of this game's soundtrack, definitely check out my top 20 shmup OSTs of all time with Ian Cook from Churches. But in a nutshell, the music of this game, again, is just fantastic, and it's something that's going to pull in newer players because it fits the visual aesthetic in a way that's hard to imagine other soundtracks being placed into the game. And it fits so well with the sound effects. You hear the laser, you hear the explosions, you hear the kick-ass tunes. Everything just blends into this visual, auditory, magical experience that, again, if you are a veteran of the genre, you're going to love and appreciate. And if you're a brand new player, you're going to love and appreciate. And it is distinctively DOJ. You hear these tunes, you hear about 3 seconds of these songs, you know, oh my God, I know that song. They stick in your mind. So these are the surface elements that everyone is going to appreciate. The beautiful visuals, the amazing soundtrack, the awesome cyberpunk aesthetic. But once we go beyond the surface elements, this is where the conversation gets interesting, because DOJ is taking a lot of really smart steps forward off of what Cave has been building towards. And so coming from Dodonpachi, my favorite shmup of all time, into DOJ, Cave did a fantastic job of working on a game that I also feel is a masterpiece, and overall improving it in almost every single way. As much as I love DDP, most of the changes that happen in DOJ are just outright upgrades. So the first major upgrade is they looked at that stupid ass tutorial stage in Dodonpachi, talking about you stage 1, and they said, yeah, get rid of that crap. So there's no more tutorial stage. We're getting right into the gameplay. Gameplay density, baby. If you want a tutorial, you've got that opening 30 seconds with the tanks to figure out how chaining works, and then you need to start playing. Another improvement that this game makes upon Dodonpachi is how it handles the chaining system. So I am a big fan of Dodonpachi's chaining system, but the issue with it is when you combined the bees with how strict the chaining of that game is, it does start to feel a little rhythm game-like. It does start to feel a little forced, where you don't have a whole lot of options when it comes to how you perform the chains in that game. It is kind of cool in that way, but I think Cave made a really smart decision of adding in a new mechanic to complement the chaining system and open it up. And that mechanic is the hyper. And so now you have a hyper that introduces flexibility into the chaining system, but it doesn't break it. It doesn't undermine it. Where yes, you can now open up some of your options, but it's still strict and rigid enough that it's tense and interesting. It doesn't completely take over like the later hypers in the DOJ sequels. And you have this sort of teeter-totter between the two where you have to decide, is it smart to hyper here, or should I save my hyper? And of course, the fact that you can store up multiple hypers, that was a real stroke of genius, because otherwise, like other chaining games with hypers, unfortunately Danmaku Unlimited 3, you can't store up multiple hypers, so you just kind of feel like an idiot if you don't hyper when you get the hyper. So it actually makes the hyper more restricted, where in DOJ, because you can stack up multiple hypers, the amount of things you can do with the multiple hypers is so clever. And I also, again, love the visual presentation of having these little hypers trailing behind you. It's a small visual touch. It's a brilliant visual touch. I can't believe they removed it in later games, because I know putting a little number down there, it might be more visually easy to read. Why not keep the hypers and also put a number? Do both. That way you're not losing that visual impact of having this giant hyper trail following you around. It just feels so cool and looks so cool. Yeah, that visual aesthetic. And also, if you store up a bunch of hypers and use it on the boss, sure, you're doing a lot of damage, but the bullet patterns speed up. This again is a really cool trade-off, and something I don't know why they dropped it, because when you go into DFK and you use your hypers and they cancel the bullets, you just want to always use your hypers for survival. But in DOJ, the fact that you have to play this nasty little risk-reward game of, okay, I'm going to kill the boss, I'm going to get some invulnerability, but I'm also going to have to pay for it if I don't know exactly what I'm doing. So it's giving you a reward, but it's also imposing a risk that you have to mitigate. So clever. And speaking of bosses, let's talk about the boss fights of this game. DOJ might have the best boss fights in all of Cave. It's in my opinion, it's way up there. Every single boss fight of this game is good, including the first boss. How is that possible? Usually when it comes to Cave games, again, Dodonpachi boss 1, just take a nap, shoot it with a bomb, get it out of here, waste of time. Whereas they take that concept and then they put it into DOJ, and they make it so if you blow the side pods, it goes all crazy, and you can do some hyper routing and all this kind of stuff. So even the very first boss of the game is interesting. And then boss 2, the swamp boss. I remember the very first time I played DOJ and fought the second boss, I was like, how is this the second boss of the game? Why is it so mean? But once you learn it and play it, it also feels so right. And that is the story of every boss in this game. Even the ones you kind of hate, even like the turtle in stage 3, you hate the turtle, but deep down, you love the turtle. The turtle is freaking awesome. It's evil, but it's awesome. And there are so many sections like that in DOJ. And the boss fights have this really special quality to them that I don't think we really see as well captured in modern bullet hells. So for example, a game that I just reviewed on the channel that I think is really good, but not nearly as great as DOJ, is a game called Ghana Blade. And I praised the boss fights in Ghana Blade, and they are like on paper, really solid, well-made boss fights. Everything's laid out, everything's logical. The thing about DOJ, no matter how much you practice the boss, there's always that little X factor of maybe the turtle throws the pattern just slightly off. Just want to highlight some of my favorite boss moments of this game. First of all, of course, the turtle, that final pattern on the turtle. I used to hate that thing. I used to be like, "Ugh." But when you dodge it, when you get a successful final pattern dodge on the turtle and you blow up the cheese graters, it just feels right. And it's also so distinctive. There's so many patterns and boss fights of this game. They just burn into your memory of how distinctive they are. Like the cheese graters. If I say the cheese graters, you know what I'm talking about if you played this game. It's just distinctive in your mind. Same thing with stage 4 where I say the giant cannon. If I say the giant cannon, you know what I'm talking about. There's so many iconic set pieces where you come into stage 4, you're just coming out of the sky stage, you're coming out of kind of a more linear static stage, the back half of stage 3. You come into stage 4, it kind of has that same flavor to it where a lot of things are coming in lines and it's a little bit more laid out, a little bit more static. And then you get into the freaking back half of stage 4 and Cave's like, oh, you're feeling comfortable? You feeling confident? And it just starts throwing some wild shit at you. And before it throws that wild shit at you, it decides, why don't you fight a giant cannon? And you come in, and the fun part is that there's a secret life inside the giant cannon. But in order to get the secret life, you have to blow up the sides and then the middle. Fun fact, you can actually bomb the sides as long as you don't destroy the middle with the bomb. You can actually even bomb the middle with a laser bomb as long as you don't destroy it. You can like weaken it, but as long as you don't actually kill it with the bomb, you can still get that hidden extend. And so the giant cannon is just imprinted in your mind, both visually and gameplay wise. Then after that, you get one of the most troll, nasty sections of the game, the rails. There's these crazy ass rails that they zip around, or zippers, whatever you want to call them. They zip around and they spit out these walls of bullets at you. But in a lesser shmup, I would say, or in a more modern style bullet hell, what would happen is if you shoot these rails, this actually happens in the range actually. If you shoot the rails, it'll cancel the rails bullets and you'll get a cancel. So then you can play the kind of classic, get around the rails, get the cancels. DOJ is like, no, let's not do that. How about we don't cancel the bullets? So if you don't speed kill every single little rail the second it appears on screen, you'll just get walled out by the bullets. And on top of that, the rails are not static. So there's not like a set sequence of how they appear when they appear. Every single time you play, it's a little Garega for you. Every single time you play, those rails are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be acting in different ways, and they are going to ruin your Christmas. And I bring up this section because a lot of players, I think a lot of like, especially modern shmup players or modern gamers generally, will look at a section like the rails and say, you know what, this is bullshit. I hate this. This is antiquated design. But my opinion, when it comes to masterpieces in game design and gameplay, I feel like really amazing games, they need to have stuff like this. They need to have thorns in the difficulty curve. So this translates into me wanting to talk about the difficulty curve of this game. So when you look at gaming reviews these days, gaming essays these days, the modern standard for a difficulty curve, you can see even graphs of this, is to have a 45-degree angle line with wiggles in it. So you're just slightly building in a very steady, predictable fashion, up and down, but slight pits and valleys on this sort of 45-degree angle curve. I think this style of difficulty curve is incredibly boring, and I would like to present DOJ as an alternative, which I would like to call a Thorned difficulty curve, which is you're getting an upward slope, but every so often in that upward slope, thorns are going to appear like a rose. They're going to pop out and they're going to make you cry. They're going to make you smash your arcade stick like Sanford Kelly. However, what they are also going to do is leave a distinct experience in your mind so that when you are able to overcome these thorns and deal with them, it feels more visceral and real than just this steady upward trajectory. Because if you have just this really static, predictable difficulty curve, you're gonna lull into a sense of autopilot. And also everything's gonna be really lame until the very end of the game. It makes it kind of lopsided in kind of an interesting way. Where in DOJ and a lot of really great shmups, these thorns, these difficulty spikes make the game more dramatic, and difficulty creates meaning. It feels good when you get around the giant cannon. It feels good when you get through the rails without dying. Every time I get through the rails without dying, I'm like, yes, you know, you're fist pumping. And then it brings you in to stage 5, the gauntlet. The part about DOJ stage 5 that makes me laugh every time is that it reminds me of the beginning of Ninja Gaiden 2, where you land, and the second you land, like 10 ninjas just throw exploding shurikens at you, literally the second you start the game. That is DOJ stage 5. If you don't come into DOJ stage 5 shooting and ready to attack, like the second the screen fades, you're already going to be in a lot of trouble. It just full court presses you immediately with no warning, with no warm up. Some people may not like that. I think it is brilliant. What's nice about that is it introduces a concept of game design that I think more people need to be talking about, which is snowballing. If you were to talk about a textbook example of snowballing, DOJ Stage 5 is the perfect example. And I actually have an example here, which was when I was streaming the game when it came out a few days ago, I got a little bit out of position at the end of the stage. Where's the hyper? I'm gonna here. There's no way. There's no way. Oh. Okay. That was crazy. And in other shmups, even DDP, I would say, if you get too out of position, you're just kind of dead. You know, it's just kind of over. You get walled off and closed off. But the way the level is designed is if you just have enough gusto, if you can just squeeze hard enough, you can squeeze through the most insane snowballing madness. And this is something that we are losing in modern games now. Modern games now do not like snowballing. They don't like things to just pile on top of each other, but then leave you just enough to get through it. What modern games like is discrete encounters. Boghog pointed this out to me and I can't unsee it. Where unlike DOJ, where enemies will pile up on top of each other and you'll get swarms of bullets just clustering into clouds of hell. Instead, what modern games do with enemy design is even if you get everyone all lined up and together and they're getting swarmed, they will be programmed to attack you one at a time. Discrete, discrete, discrete. They're not going to just all overlap and kill you. But what is really fun about games that embrace snowballing is it gives more meaning to fighting multiple enemies, and it gives more meaning for when you get off route, getting back on route is actually a real challenge versus, oh, let me just do a witch time dodge or a parry or summon and we're right back in it. I love this about shmups, and I love this about DOJ, and Stage 5 ending is a perfect example of snowballing in action. And so before we talk about the specifics of the port, let's talk about DOJ's scoring and survival gameplay. So DOJ's scoring system, I won't go on and on about because this is going to be a giant video, but DOJ's scoring system, masterpiece, all these years later, has really held up. And I know when it comes to playing chaining shmups and playing shmups at high scoring, the routes are going to always get very narrowed down, and there's always going to be some sort of optimal path that you will find. But what makes DOJ's scoring system so awesome and why it has so much longevity is that optimal scoring route is not completely obvious. Where if you look at my favorite shmup, Dodonpachi, part of the reason why I like Dodonpachi is because its optimal scoring and its optimal style of gameplay is kind of obvious. Dodonpachi kind of forces you to play correctly if you're going to try to play for a score. There are paths, and you must follow that path. It's going to be difficult, but you must follow it. Whereas DOJ, because of the hyper system, and because you can delay and collect hypers at all these different times, and because the hypers link in with the actual chaining and with picking up the bees, they all meld together into this nice cohesive unit. It makes it where there's a lot of flexibility with the scoring system, so that over time, players have found more and more clever ways to optimize the game. It isn't totally obvious. If you were just a new player and you didn't really know the game system all that much and you were instructed, okay, make a task of this game and get the highest record score using a task, I doubt someone, even using tasks, could beat the world record scores of this game without seeing them first, because of the way you have to understand the routing. It's not just about execution. There's also a lot of strategic knowledge involved with the scoring of this game. And so with all that being said, I could rant on and on forever about how great of a game DOJ is, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts of this port. So when I review Shmups, I don't just review the ROM of the game in isolation. I also talk about the quality of the port itself. I made an analogy in a previous video where if you imagine the base game as a pizza, then you should imagine the port as the pizza delivery boy. And it is the duty of the pizza delivery boy to deliver your food in the highest quality possible. And so with some companies, like with Zero Dev or City Connection, they tend not to give you your pizza in pristine quality. Maybe they drop it on the ground, maybe it gets rained on, maybe they leave it in their car too long and it gets cold. But when it comes to M2 shot triggers, not only do they deliver the pizza to you in pristine condition, in perfect condition, right out of the oven, but they also give you free dessert. They give you extra stuff with your perfect pizza. They are above and beyond what everyone else is doing, and I'm pretty sure they are doing it while making no money. And not only are they accurate in terms of the graphics and the slowdown, they are also accurate with the input lag. And I am notorious for being very picky about this. And the reason why I'm very picky about this is because in the genre of shmups, it matters. And it matters a lot. So you can't just take a game that natively has low input lag, like Batsugun, and throw it in a laggy Sega Saturn emulator and call it a day. You need to preserve the original input lag, and M2 shot triggers are masters of that. And here in Reincarnation, they uphold their legacy. So looking at the PS4 version, which is the version I recommend, it is only 2 frames of input lag. That is arcade perfect, pretty much. Maybe the arcade board is slightly less laggy than that, but when I measure my PGM, I'm getting 2 frames out of that. Maybe some of the hardware adds a tiny bit of lag, but 2 frames out of my PGM, 2 frames out of my PS4, and then really impressively on the Nintendo Switch, 3 frames. Now that doesn't sound as impressive as 2 frames, but the Nintendo Switch tends to have laggier shmups on it, so the fact that they're getting it down to at least 3 frames on Nintendo Switch is really impressive. But like I said, if you want to play the game on your monitor or play it on leaderboards, I highly recommend playing the PS4 version. One, because it's less laggy, but also because the PS4 leaderboards are going to be the leaderboards to play on, because all the top Japanese players and top Western players for that part are going to be on the PS4 leaderboards. But if you don't really care about that and you want to play it in handheld mode, the Nintendo Switch port is also really good. I get the feeling that a lot of development time of M2 went into making the Switch port as good as possible, because it's probably going to be more successful commercially. Just buy both versions so you can play in handheld mode if you want. And so now let's talk about the features and content of Reincarnation, because I knew this was a shmup that was going to get some tender loving care from M2 Shot Triggers. So there are 3 different versions of the game, and there are 3 different versions that I'm very, very happy to see included. In fact, I would have been quite annoyed if not all 3 versions were on there. Let's talk about the version. So the main arcade version of the game is DOJ White Label. White Label gets its name from the title screen, which is white, and it is the initial arcade version of the game. It is the arcade version of the game Cave originally put out, and it is the arcade version that is actually most similar to Dodonpachi. So if you're a fan of Dodonpachi, there's going to be things about White Label that you really like. For example, the difficulty. White Label is incredibly difficult. It is the most difficult of the 3 versions. So if you're playing the game for the first time, don't play White Label. Save that for later. White Label is the most difficult because it has really aggressive rank and bullet patterns. It isn't as forgiving with the rank. The rank doesn't go down as much when you die, and you've got a bigger, chunkier hitbox. And so White Label is significantly more difficult than Black Label, and it seems to be the version that tends to be less played up until recently. Feels like in the past few years though, you know, it used to be all about Black Label, but now it feels like White Label's getting some mojo. A lot of the Japanese super players are really playing a lot of White Label, and it is super cool. There's an event I covered a few years on the channel where we had 2 Japanese super players, SPS and Fufufu, facing off in White Label, and it was an incredibly exciting run. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it here. But yeah, White Label, I really like it. It's really growing on me, but I'm not good enough to 2-all it at this point. It is one of the most difficult cave 2-alls outright. It is a mean boy. Another thing that's key about White Label that's not in the other versions is that in the first loop, when you get to the end of first loop, it just takes your extends, and then you come into the second loop with just 1 extend. So some people call it like a glorified loading screen, the first loop. I think it's kind of a cool concept. I think the idea of it though was, Cave was like, yeah, we're sick of these super players doing 2 loops and taking all our money and taking too much time, so let's just take your lives and kill you as quickly as possible. But yeah, the second loop in White Label is notorious for that. But again, it gives it its own flavor. It's famous, it's infamous. So I like it. I think it's kind of cool. But for most of us in the mortal world, let's talk about the most popular version of DOJ. And I'm actually sort of surprised that White Label is getting top billing, because I would have thought it was reversed, which is DOJ Black Label. It's called Black Label because the title screen is black, and it is a revision of White Label because Cave were like, yeah, we're kind of mean with the original version of this game. We're kind of bullying new players a little bit too much. So let's tone it back and let's make a more, what we think now is like a more modern style bullet hell, which is Black Label. So they dial back the rank. They make the rank a little bit more forgiving. You can now use hypers without getting absolutely obliterated. And when you die, the rank resets back more. They tone down some of the bullet patterns, and they let you keep your extends from the first loop into the second loop. So they took away that crazy setting. You're getting more hypers. It makes clearing the game a lot easier. It is significantly an easier 2-all clear instead of White Label, but still, it's a cave 2-all, so it's still absolutely brutal. But yeah, it is the more reasonable, popular version of the game. It's more bullet hell, especially because you have a smaller hitbox. That's something I really appreciate. They slim down the hitbox a little bit in Black Label. The one big critique I have of Reincarnation is that you can get the hitbox display for White Label, which I've been waiting years to get. So I was so happy to get that as an option in White Label, but it's not an option in Black Label. That's blasphemous. And why? You put so much work into this port, M2. Why don't you show us the damn hitboxes in Black Label, you motherfuckers? So that's something, if I can get through to them and get them to patch it, I never have, but let's pray. Especially because it's a different size, so players playing the version for the first time will probably want to know that the hitbox is smaller. Black Label, really glad it's in there. I'm just a little bit surprised it's not the main version, but White Label, like I said, it's got some mojo recently, and the Japanese players seem to be really into it, so I could see them actually preferring White Label at this point. And then the really cool bonus inclusion, Gray Label, as we call it. Now this one is the front actually gray. It's more like it's cool that there's a white label and a black label. And so some people refer to this like the ROM is called Dodonpachi 3. It's the international version of White Label, but that's kind of lame. So let's call it Gray Label. I like that. Even if it doesn't totally make sense, I like the poetic of calling it Gray Label. So Gray Label, as poetically fitting, is an in-between between White Label and Black Label. So it isn't as insane and brutal as White Label, but it's not as generous and sort of updated as Black Label. It's the in-between version, and I believe the rarest version of the game. I'm sure like if you have a DDP3 Gray Label arcade board, it's really rare and expensive and all that. But yeah, I'm really happy that it was included in this version, not only because I've been wanting to play it more and explore it more, also because now we have an official inbuilt leaderboard for Gray Label. So now you can watch world record tier players playing on the PS4 version, probably playing Gray Label competitively, which is a unique sight to see. This is the least explored of the three versions, and I think having it preserved on this port is going to give it a lot of longevity into the future that it might not have had otherwise, because Japanese players don't play on unofficial emulation all that much, because you know how strict Japan is about that, and Western players tend not to be that interested in these little variants if other players aren't playing it. So now having it on the port, having it spotlighted, we're going to see a lot more attention and action for this version of the game, which I'm really excited about. And then let's talk about the arranges. So coming into this release, I've been looking forward to this damn release all year long, and coming into it I said there better be arranges, M2, or I'm going to be pissed, because we kind of didn't get an arrange in Esperade. We got the updated version without milking, which I appreciate, and it has a TLB, which is kind of like an arrange, but it's not like a full-on arrange. And so I was really hoping we'd see an arrange, and we didn't just get one arrange, we got 3 arranges. They went all out with the content of this game. Now, we'll talk about my feelings on the quality of these arranges as we go through them, but I will say, if we're just taking a step back and looking at the overall package of Reincarnation, it is probably the most content rich of all the packages. But that being said, I'm not quite sure these arranges are as good as some of the previous M2 arranges, especially Destiny arrange. That arrange mode is one of the best arrange modes I've just ever seen outright. The scoring, the survival gameplay, kind of the mix between the two, the styling, how it's so much different than the base arcade game, but in a good way. That arrange is legendary, and I was really hoping we would see an arrange of that quality in Reincarnation, but I don't think we do. So let's go through them one by one. So we get arrange S, and it's cool how they're by the Exy dolls. So S shot type. By the way, in Dodonpachi DaiOuJou, everyone plays expert mode ship because expert mode ship is amazing and awesome and the coolest ships ever. So they kind of wanted to give some purpose, I think, to the other ship types here. So shot type arrange. This one I think is the coolest idea, the coolest concept, which is let's make DaiOuJou a Topeland style game. So they remove the cave concentrated laser, they remove bombs, you just have a rapid shot fire, and you play the entire range just shooting, and they cut down on the bullet density and they increase the bullet speed. So you get something like the Mushihime-sama original style, which is a really good concept. The only problem with it, I think, is that they down-tuned the difficulty too much. I think with these 3 arranges, M2 were specifically aiming at newer and intermediate players, and unfortunately I think in that process they kind of curtailed the longevity of these arranges, because as you go through and play the arrange, it has a rank that increases with how many extends you build up, but it only caps out at 15. I think if they would have kept the rank climbing, the better you played, that would have really given the mode longevity. Because on paper, it's a really cool concept, but I think they handicapped it too much by not allowing you to continue to build the rank. So it makes the game just straight up easy. Like, I beat this arrange the first time I ever played it. The scoring meta is already like no miss the entire range. And if you're like a Jamer's level player, I'm sure he's already done that. So it's a cool idea. If you're a newer player, you're going to love this arrange. I really like what it's doing for newer players, but I don't think it's going to have the longevity that I want to see. And then we come into Arrange L. Arrange L is interesting because it's most like the base arcade version of the game, but what they did was they brought in a bullet canceling mechanic where when you laser kill larger enemies, you get a bullet cancel, which makes some of the more chaotic, crazy sections of the game, like Stage 5 and Stage 4 rails, way easier, and it kind of tones down that thorn I was talking about. That thorn, it gets clipped off. You know, this is much more of a standard modern day bullet hell style design, and I get it. It makes it a lot more accessible and approachable, less nasty, and you know, these are things that arranges can do. Again, I wish it had a little bit more of a bite, a little bit more longevity for the experienced players, because I feel like Arrange L is still a little bit below even my skill level of the game. I think I cleared it my first try. And it is cool that you get to fight Hibachi at the end. I do like that. But because I could stockpile so many resources, I beat Hibachi my first try, I believe, on stream. No, that ain't right. I shouldn't be able to do that because I don't know how to fight Hibachi in this game. So I think they could have just toned down how much resources you can stockpile, maybe increase the rank a little bit or something. Again, it's just a little bit too much on the easy side. And that brings us into the expert arrange. So the funny thing is expert arrange is for me and my skill level of player. So my skill level of player is I am quite competent and quite consistent at getting 1-all clears of the game, but I have no hope at this point of 2-alling Dodonpachi DaiOuJou. I have to practice it a lot more, put a lot more effort and save state practice and really hone in my understanding of the second loop before I could even hope to clear second loop, even in Black Label. But in EX Arrange, you get the second loop difficulty patterns, but with a lot of crutches, with a lot of extra help. Like, you build up a lot of resources, and then you have that bullet canceling mechanic. And so it kind of gives you the base experience of playing in the second loop, but it's also helping you along with some guiding angels on your shoulders. So it's like perfect for someone my skill level. If you're a newer player, I think it's actually going to be a bit overwhelming. It's going to kick your ass maybe just a little bit because you still do need to know the patterns and levels pretty well in the boss fights and all that. But if you know and can get a 1-all, you're going to get this clear after a bit of practice. If there was these 3 arranges and then a 4th Destiny style arrange, I'd have no complaints. You know, you could have the 3 arranges for beginner, kind of beginner-ish intermediate player, and then we're just missing that 4th expert arrange. The arrange for the iconoclasts of the world, the arrange for the Moglars, the arrange for the Jamers, like the Destiny arrange in Ketsui. So it's a shame they don't get that, but overall, I'm still really impressed with what they included. And the fact that we have Gray Label included, we get a nice suite of content still. I just really think the missing ingredient here is that final, real meaty arrange mode. One of the things I forget to talk about with these M2 ports is the arcade challenge mode. And I definitely should talk about these more because you can tell M2 put a lot of time and effort into the arcade challenge mode. And I think for a lot of players, this is like the main mode of the game for you. So what Arcade Challenge is it takes the arcade version of the game and it slices it up into little discrete challenges. So it avoids a lot of that snowballing we're talking about and teaches you the game bit by bit, stage by stage. But it does a great job of making this a fun experience, and it has all these awesome features. And for me, for a long time, I've never really used Arcade Challenge because I don't like to be told what to do. And so I'll just usually play the main version of the game and just use my own save state. But one thing that's really cool about Arcade Challenge is you can use it to create your own little like boss rush. And that's something I want to recommend to new players, where if you're learning the game and you're working on your 1-all and you want something to do and to get better at the game, but you're burned out with practicing the stages over and over, and the Arcade Challenge mode makes that really cool and fun. So that's a real highlight. And also it does introduce a sort of progression system for players who are looking for something like that. You know, they don't want too much self-imposed progression. Now you have the game formally introducing progression and recognizing that. So I think that's a good inclusion as well. And then there's the super easy mode, which I kind of made some divisive statements about during the announcement when I said no one cares about super easy. I learned that some people do quite care about super easy. But one of my biggest critiques of super easy mode, and I made a whole video about this, difficulty matters, is that the super easy mode is just kind of an island unto itself. So if you're like a brand new player, or like ultra casual, or like a young child, and you want to just kind of play around in the game without too much consequence, that is what super easy mode does. But I think what this port does really well is it allows you to bridge out of super easy mode. So if you're a brand new entry level player, you can play super easy mode, and then from there you can go through the arranges one by one. And I think that's what M2 were thinking with the arranges, is they started with super easy mode as like the entry for the brand new player, and then they build you a little bridge out of super easy mode with the arranges. So you go from super easy to range S to range L to a 1-all, and then back to arrange EX, and then you're going to go for your 2-all and black label. So they do build you this nice path out of super easy. So I do like the super easy mode of this game better than the super easy mode of like Esperade. For Esperade, there's no sort of bridge, so you're just stuck playing this baby mode of Esperade. Then you go to play arcade and you get absolutely clobbered with nothing bridging in between the two. So I think this port did a much better job of that. Then of course you've got the great leaderboards where you can download and watch world record scores. This is legitimately very good, not only if you play competitively, but if you want to learn the game, you can actually access either people playing around your level or world record replays and just watch them back on your PS4. I absolutely love that. Then they've got the beautiful UI. I think they did a great job. It just continues to look more and more polished. I love the little icons on the save state slots. And I also really like that now finally you have 99 save state slots. Because in the other M2 ports, for some reason, I don't know what it is with Japanese developers, if save states are limited resources or something, but on the Ketsui Destiny port, you can only get 30 save states. And if you're trying to go for a 2-all, 30 save states ain't gonna cut it. So you do finally get the proper amount of save states, 99, and that sounds comical, but if you start playing a chaining game, you're gonna build up 99 save states way faster than you think. But they make the dumbass decision to pool together the different modes into the same save state pool. Why they did this, I have no idea. So yes, you do have 99 slots, which is objectively an improvement over the 30 slots, but you can't get 99 for each mode. You have to share the slots across all the modes. Even still, that's annoying, but it's still worth it, because if you're working on a 2-all, you're just going to be playing the 2-all mode that you're working on. So just go ahead and use all the states up for that, and then you can kind of Jenga them around as the things you're working on. So it is a great improvement. I just think it's really stupid that they just don't give you 99 slots for every single mode of the game. And then bummer if you are a Switch user, because you only get 30 slots on the Nintendo Switch. Why? I don't know why that is. You can get 99 slots on RetroArch on the Switch. I don't know if like slots somehow use up RAM or memory or in some kind of crazy way on the Nintendo Switch. I don't know what it is, but for some reason the Switch version you only get 30 slots, so that's not going to be fun. And that really isn't enough, and that's another reason why I recommend the PS4 version over the Switch version. You can do it with 30 slots. It is doable, but 99 is much better. And that brings us to the gadgets of the game. This is a signature feature of the M2 ports. So we got the gadgets They're great. They're fantastic. You can now finally see your rank, so you don't have to guess what increases your rank, what doesn't increase your rank, and have all these suspicions and little rituals like I used to have. Now you can see, oh, so it turns out collecting hypers doesn't increase your rank. I actually thought that it did. So for years, I would avoid collecting hyper items in the earlier stages because I thought collecting them, just touching them, increased your rank. Turns out it doesn't. You have to actually use them. So yeah, it's lightning to learn that. And also when it comes to routing out what you're doing, especially in your chaining, being able to see the rank graph as you go, an important learning tool. I'm really happy to see that. And apparently, according to Jamers, the most important gadget is the invulnerability frame gadget. And that makes sense because when it comes to DOJ and hypers, whenever you activate a hyper, you get a certain amount of invulnerability frames. And this is super important for both chaining and also fighting Hibachi, because fighting Hibachi, the main meta on it, why the Hibachi fight in DOJ is less crazy than the boss fight in DDP of Hibachi, is that you can kind of cheese him a little bit by abusing hypers on him. And part of abusing hypers on him is knowing exactly how many iframes you have. And so having that gadget telling you in real time how much iframes you have left is a very helpful and important resource. But apparently this is horizontal exclusive. For whatever reason, M2 did not remember to put the invulnerability gadget in Tate mode, the most important mode of the game. I think we all can agree. We all play on Tate, right? None of you are those dirty horizontal users, right? We all play on Tate, right? Well, if you're playing in Tate, you can't see the invulnerability gadget. A simple setting, M2, along with some other patches I include in this review. Jamers wants it. And if there's one rule on this channel, it's Jamers gets what Jamers wants. So M2, put the damn invulnerability gadget in Tate mode. And so let's close out on one final note, which is the game's soundtrack selection. I think I speak for all DOJ fans out there when I say that I am a bit disappointed with the soundtrack selection of this game because there's like one arranged soundtrack. So let me remind you, with Ketsui Detoni, had like 3 arranged soundtracks and they're awesome. One of them was kind of meh, but the fact that there's 3 of them was awesome. Even if it's DLC, it doesn't matter. It was awesome. But here in DOJ, one of the best shmup soundtracks of all time, we've got a pretty cool new arrange, I will say. The new arrange grew on me. So when I first started playing the new arrange OST, I was like, it's all right. But the more you play it, it's got this kind of Tron, future funk type of vibe to it. I can't quite describe it. Ian from Churches would know how to describe it better than me. But the boss version of this soundtrack, all the boss tracks are awesome. These boss tunes are kicking ass. So I love the boss tunes. I do like the new arrange. Problem is that there are 2 other arranges of DOJ that are amazing. There's the PS2 arrange, which is pretty cool. And then there is the legendary Xbox 360 arrange. The Xbox 360 port of DOJ is hot garbage. You can take that disc and snap it in half if you want. But the soundtrack of the DOJ arrange on Xbox 360 is top tier. It is amazing. I like it more than the actual original arcade soundtrack. It is one of my favorite shmup soundtracks of all time, probably my favorite arrange of all time. Make it happen, M2. If we have to buy it as DLC, we will buy it as DLC. This soundtrack is just too good to be stuck on the stupid Xbox 360 version of the game. It needs to find its home on this port. I am quite disappointed it's not there. But overall, once again, M2 just knocking it out of the park. A recommendation of this game is not firm enough. I think a demand at this point. If you like shmups at all, if you don't like shmups, but you think you could like shmups someday in the future, if there's a 1 in a million chance you may like shmups, pick up Dodonpachi Reincarnation. Give it a try. Play some DOJ. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is a true enduring masterpiece, not just the flavor of the month. Easily my game of the year. And the fact that M2 did such a fantastic job doing the port, it just feels right. It feels good. It feels good to review a game and be happy and to say, you know what? It's just delivering on what it needs to deliver. It plays how it needs to play. That's why I love M2 so much. They do it and they do it right. So thanks so much. Please like, subscribe, tell all your friends. Adios, everyone.
So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Accepting Panda, Admiral Coconut, Anhold, Alexander Pfeiffer, Anthony A, Arcade Hell, Arrow Viper, Autoname, Beam Pit, Bo, Ben, Beetle Dames, Bog Hog, Borgie22, Chase Palumbo, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Claricliff, Climby Coyote, Coast, Colorboy, Cooksand666, Cook Some Soup, Crusty Boy, Des Audio, Dan Chi, Darren Griffin, Dave Hansen, David Crespo, Delta Tango 6, Dick Jones, Dingo, Disco Stas Leia, DJ420 Praise It, Dr. Bosky, Elias Alonso, Evan Serafet, FCK, F Deluxe, Friskin, Frames Per Human, Francisco, Full Set, Gameboy Guru, Geese Machine, GPM, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JBRPG, Jink Hans, John Kelly, George Sand, Kate, K2, K-Horse, Contain, Praise the Boys, Low Casting, Myashpa, Malaise, Mars Bar, Matt O'Leary, Maz, Megadeth859, Minung, Moonro, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Pedro Perez, Psycho Blizzard, Queen Charlene, Rafael Trujillo, Raul, Real Skeen, Retro Schmupper, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Ryan Bartlett, Scanline City, Cisa FW, Shazzy, Shmup Junkie, Sarah Pong, Spiders STG, Steady AI, Steve Fiction, Street Magic, Super Funk, SW1335, Tamzarian, Takero Mucho, Taze Ryu, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, Toho Rizardi, Tsugumo, 2YU, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Ursua, Ushi Mushi, Vic Viper, Beautiful, Wabby Legs, Zachary Patton, and Zeal.